I spent nearly $10,000 planning the perfect anniversary party for my parents. The tent, the flowers, the chef-curated menu, they didn't lift a finger. I did it all. But just a week before the event, my aunt texted me, "You're not invited." My mum, she said, "It's nothing personal." Nothing personal. That was the moment I realised I wasn't their daughter. I was their unpaid assistant, their fixer, their backup plan. But this time I didn't stay silent. I cancelled everything. And what came next wasn't revenge, it was freedom. They never asked if I was tired. They never asked if I had plans. I was the one who showed up every time without question. Claire, the dependable one. Claire, who always picked up her phone. Claire, who could fix the thermostat, find a lost password book, a flight refinance, a loan, and remember Aunt Susan's allergy to almonds. At 42, I had a stable career in finance, a modest condo in Seattle, and an uncanny ability to patch up both broken appliances and broken family logistics. What I didn't have, what no one seemed to notice I lacked, was peace. I wasn't married, no kids, just me. And that somehow made me even more useful. Like my lack of a real family meant I was always available to help with everyone else's. If something broke in my parents' house, I was there. When my brother needed help navigating student loans 10 years after dropping out, I was the one who sat with him on Zoom. When my sister forgot her anniversary, I coordinated an entire surprise weekend getaway for her husband and took care of their dog. I didn't mind, at least that's what I kept telling myself. But over time, the math started to feel wrong. Every ask came with the same tone. "You're so good at this, I knew you'd know what to do. You always come through. Compliments, sure, but not connection." No one asked how I was doing unless it was followed by a request. I became the go-to, the reliable one, not the daughter or the sister anyone confided in, not the woman anyone celebrated, just the helper. It didn't start that way. When I was younger, I believed my value came from being needed. My mom, Helen, was always a bit frazzled, emotionally reactive, often overwhelmed. My dad, Ray, was the classic avoider. "Talk to your mother," he'd say when I asked anything remotely personal. So I became the buffer, the fixer, the emotional translator. And I got good at it, too good. By my late 20s, I was managing their taxes. In my 30s, I started paying for small things, first their Netflix, then small home repairs, then groceries when I noticed the fridge looked empty. No one asked me to, I just did, and they let me. What started as help became expectation. If the printer jammed, I got a photo. If the light bulbs flickered, I got a call. And if I didn't answer right away, I'd get 3 texts and a voicemail. "Hope everything's okay. Just wondering if you've seen this." I wasn't bitter. Not really. I'd built this system. I made it easy for them. I trained them to see me as the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything. But every time I stayed late on a Sunday to install antivirus software or left work early to drive 2 hours and fix a leaking pipe, something chipped away. I was helping, but I was also vanishing. No one remembered my birthday last year, not even a text. I told myself they were busy. Julia had 2 kids now. Matt was working nights. My parents were getting older. But the silence stayed with me louder than I expected. They called when they needed something. They praised me when I delivered. But when I was just Claire, not the fixer, not the planner, not the checkbook, there was nothing. That was the role I played. Not the daughter who got hugs or the sister who got surprise visits. I was the person who brought solutions. I was the one who answered when others didn't. I was useful, always useful. And as I stared at the spreadsheet organising my parents' anniversary party, vendors lined up deposits, paid timelines, confirmed I realised I was doing it again. Fixing, managing, orchestrating, pouring myself into something that wouldn't be remembered as effort, but assumed as obligation. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered, what happens when the fixer stops fixing? It started with a casual phone call. "Your dad and I were thinking Helen said we should do something special for our 45th. Her voice was breezy, almost distracted, like the idea had just occurred. But I could already hear the wheels turning. Special meant big. Big meant expensive. Expensive meant me. Still, I didn't hesitate. Of course, I said, leave it to me. Within a week, I had a vision board. Pinterest inspiration, floral mood boards, tent options, seasonal menus. I tracked down a catering company that specialized in family-style service, elegant but personal. I visited venues around Seattle and even reached out to a vineyard 2 hours north because my dad once mentioned liking their Pinot Noir. I took time off work to do site visits, sent long email chains to confirm capacity limits, ADA, access electrical specs. I worked late into the night designing the invitation in Canva, cross-checking guest addresses, estimating head counts. Helen would chime in here and there, nothing too fancy, your father hates beef. Make sure there's gluten-free bread. But for the most part, she left it to me. And I didn't complain. I liked logistics. I liked seeing something messy become something beautiful. It felt good at first, like a gift I could give them. A thank you for raising me for the roof, the school fees, the home-cooked meals I never appreciated enough when I was younger. Maybe this would be the moment, the thing that made them see me not as a utility but as a daughter. Maybe Julia and Matt would pitch in and we'd laugh over centerpieces, joke about family quirks. Maybe this party would stitch something broken back together. That hope cracked the day I walked in on Julia's voice floating down the hallway of our parents' house. She didn't know I was there. I'd stopped by to confirm final head counts, pick up Helen's list of her oldest friends. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in. She was in the kitchen on speakerphone. Her voice was sharper than usual, tinged with sarcasm. She's taking this whole thing way too seriously. It's just a party, not a state dinner. I swear Claire needs to control everything or she melts down. A pause. Laughter on the other end, probably Matt. She doesn't even ask for help, Julia continued. Just bulldozes her way through like she's the only one capable. I think she likes being in charge. Makes her feel important. I stood frozen in the hallway, the guest list paper crumpled in my hand. It wasn't what she said, it was how easily she said it. Like it was true. Like I was some desperate, overbearing control freak instead of the person footing the bill and doing the work. And the worst part, it wasn't new. I'd heard this before in sideways comments and passive digs. I'd just chosen not to listen. I backed out of the house quietly, never letting her know I'd heard. That night I sat with it. My instinct was to cancel everything, to let them plan their casual little party themselves. But something inside me resisted. Not pride, not ego, just clarity. This wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about being appreciated. It was about doing one last thing right on my terms. I didn't want to explode. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to finish what I started. Not for them, for me. So I kept going. I confirmed the orchid order blue because Ray once said they reminded him of his grandmother. I adjusted the guest list. I secured heaters in case the weather turned. I added a dessert station with gluten-free options because Helen's stomach had become picky in recent years. I finished the final details with a strange kind of calm. The kind you feel right before a storm. Not panicked, not defeated, just aware that something's coming. And this time, I wasn't afraid. The text came on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after I finalised the dessert vendor and 4 days before the rental tent delivery. It was from Aunt Susan. Just 10 words, no emojis, no context. We're keeping the guest list tight. You're not included. I stared at it for a solid minute, certain I'd read it wrong. I blinked. Reread again. It didn't make sense. I wasn't included in the party I planned. The one I funded, coordinated, poured weeks of my time into. This had to be a mistake. Maybe she meant to text someone else. Maybe she left out a sentence. Maybe this was a weird joke. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Helen. Her message was worse than the first. It's nothing personal, sweetheart. We just want to keep it intimate. Hope you understand. Hope I understand. My hands trembled as I held the phone. The world around me seemed to still. The air got thicker, heavier. I sat down on the edge of my bed and read the message again and again, until it etched itself into my brain. It wasn't personal. I whispered the words aloud as if saying them would make them make sense. But they didn't, because nothing about this could be anything but personal. They had cut me out, not overlooked me, not forgotten, deliberately removed me from a celebration I had created for them, paid for, laboured over, designed with love and thought and precision. For a moment I felt dizzy. The betrayal was sharp and immediate, but underneath it came a deeper sting. Not rage, humiliation. The kind that swells in your chest and makes your throat tight, your face flush. I waited for another text, a clarification, a follow-up. Some kind of explanation that would undo the pain. But nothing came. I didn't respond, couldn't. There were no words that wouldn't either scream or beg, and I wasn't ready to do either. Instead, I sat in silence. I let the pain do what it needed to do. I let the moment stretch, let it hurt. Then I opened my laptop. I started with the tent rental, checked the contract, cancelable up to 48 hours before setup. I clicked cancel reservation. Next was catering. I'd used a booking service that allowed fund holds for dispute cases. I initiated a freeze citing material changes in the event structure. I flagged the venue deposit as in dispute, contacted the payment processor and submitted documentation of the agreement. I outlined how I'd been removed from the event I funded and that services were no longer aligned with the original terms. The florist had already ordered the orchids non-refundable. That was fine. A loss I could live with. I didn't do any of it in anger. There was no grand gesture, no vengeance, just a quiet reclaiming of something that had been taken from me without permission, my place, my effort, my dignity. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation. I needed to act. And I did. When it was all done, I sat back and let the quiet return. But this time it wasn't suffocating, it was clear. Like a bell had rung somewhere deep in my soul. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't even family dysfunction. This was intentional, and that meant my response could be intentional too. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding to stop being the person they used, the person they erased, the invisible one. If they didn't want me at the party, fine. 2 days after I cancelled the last of the bookings, I got a call from Emily, my cousin. She didn't know what had happened, at least not the whole of it. She just wanted to double-check the dress code for the party. Julia said it's cocktail, but not formal, she asked. I was quiet for a moment, unsure how to respond. You're going right, she added. I laughed, a sound too sharp to be natural. I guess Julia didn't mention. I'm not invited. There was a pause. Wait, what? Don't worry about it, I said quickly. Long story. But her confusion had sparked something. I opened social media, Julia's stories to be specific. I hadn't checked them in a while. She wasn't one for oversharing, but she couldn't resist a bit of a show when she was excited. And she was clearly excited about something. A few taps in, I found it. A boomerang video of Julia clinking wine glasses with a man I didn't recognise. Tall, square-jawed, wearing a shirt too fitted for comfort. The caption read, "Can't wait for you to meet him at the big celebration. Big celebration." I froze the screen. My chest felt hollow. I clicked on his profile. New boyfriend. Photos together at Pike Place brunch shots, hashtags like #newbeginning and #finallyhappy. And he was invited. She had invited her new boyfriend, the man she'd known for 2 months, to the party I had designed, paid for, organised, to the party I was now excluded from. Twist the knife a little deeper. Why don't you? And suddenly the whole thing crystallised. My absence wasn't about space. It wasn't about intimacy. It wasn't even about me. It was about their comfort, about keeping the narrative easy and clean. Claire was too intense, too controlling, too complicated. So they replaced me with someone shinier, someone newer, someone who didn't make them feel guilty or exposed. A man who brought nothing but a smile and a wine glass, and that was enough. I sat with that realisation for a long time. And then I did what I hadn't fully done yet. I closed the loop. I cancelled the custom linen order, non-essential, not yet charged. I contacted the dessert vendor and asked them to hold off on any prep. I flagged the email thread with the venue manager as no further action needed. I returned the folding chairs I'd pre-rented and donated the deposit to a local shelter. I withdrew everything that could still be withdrawn. Quietly, calmly, deliberately. There was no angry text, no long monologue, no last word email, just the slow, methodical undoing of everything I had built stone by stone, thread by thread. Let them host their party. Let them toast and pose for photos and pretend that nothing had cracked. Let them smile over paper plates and store-bought cake and pretend the absence didn't echo through every clink of a wine glass. Let them explain to the caterer why there was no payment. Let them scramble to find chairs. Let them realise the heater never arrived. Let them feel the full weight of what I had carried, what they never acknowledged, and what they now had to bear without me. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done. The morning of the party, my phone started buzzing at 7:12 a.m. The screen lit up with my dad's name, Dad, mobile. I let it ring. A minute later it rang again, then Susan, then Julia, then back to Dad. 17 calls in total before noon. I watched each one come in like waves crashing against a rock, persistent, desperate, and entirely too late. I didn't answer. Instead, I brewed coffee. I made my favourite breakfast avocado toast with chili flakes and poached egg. I sat on my balcony wrapped in a worn flannel blanket and listened to the quiet hum of the city waking up around me. Birds, distant traffic, the occasional bark of a dog. I didn't think about the party. I didn't need to. Around 2:00 p.m, curiosity won. I opened Instagram, not my own, but Emily's. She posted everything always had. If the event was happening, it would be there. And it was. The first photo showed a long folding table, slightly bowed in the middle, covered in a wrinkled plastic tablecloth. A mismatched lineup of grocery store snacks, pretzels, grapes, what looked like baby carrots, dumped out of a bag. Bottled water lined the edge. A bright orange cooler sat beside it. Next was a group shot Helen and Ray with 2 of their siblings. No tent overhead. The sky looked overcast. Everyone squinted slightly in the grey light. My dad wore a stiff expression, arms crossed, jaw clenched. My mum's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. And then came the third image, the flowers. 3 bunches of supermarket carnations, red and white, shoved into a clear pitcher. Still wrapped in their price tag sleeves. One of the tags was half torn, hanging like a careless afterthought. I scrolled slowly frame by frame like someone passing evidence at a crime scene. There was no music set up, no formal seating. A few lawn chairs leaned unevenly on the grass. The cake, if it could be called that, was a simple sheet cake from a local bakery, Happy Anniversary, written in rushed, uneven cursive. The image that lingered the longest was one of Julia standing beside her new boyfriend, smiling brightly. She wore a pastel dress and held a glass of rosé, her arm around him like they'd been together for years. They both looked thrilled, comfortable, untouched by the mess behind them. My name didn't appear in any captions, not even once. I wasn't a missing piece. I was an erased one. And yet I didn't feel rage, just a strange hollowness like watching a movie you already know the ending to, one where the twist isn't shocking, just inevitable. I leaned back on my couch and exhaled. The party had gone on. Not well, not as planned, but it had happened. And they'd done it without me. They hadn't just cut me out, they'd stumbled through the wreckage of what I built and still tried to celebrate, as if none of it mattered, as if I didn't matter. But in those pictures, in their stiff smiles and mismatched chairs and awkward staging, I saw it. The emptiness, the loss. They thought they could replace effort with appearance. That sentiment could be faked with cheap decorations and plastic cups, but the absence showed, not just the absence of funds or planning or professional touches, my absence. That evening, just as I was settling into a movie, my phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "You okay?" she asked. "There's stuff being said. Figured I'd check in before assuming anything." My stomach tightened. What kind of stuff I typed back? There was a pause, then a wall of messages started to appear one after another, like dominoes falling. Apparently Julia had been telling relatives that I'd backed out last minute, that I never actually paid for anything, that the whole ordeal was stressful because I was going through something emotional. She told Aunt Susan I'd offered to help, but ghosted when the pressure got too real. Told Uncle David that I'd had a breakdown and they decided it was better if I didn't come. She was rewriting history and worse, making me unstable in the retelling. I sat frozen phone in hand, rage and disbelief twisting through me like a slow fire. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was intentional character assassination. She knew exactly what she was doing. And the worst part, it was working. People believed her. Because Claire the Fixer never made a scene, never pushed back, never set the record straight. It was easier to paint me as overwhelmed than to admit what they'd done. They didn't want the truth, they wanted a version of events that absolved them. For a few minutes I did nothing, let the fury swirl and settle. Then I stood up, walked to my desk, opened my laptop and clicked through a folder I had saved just in case. Receipts, emails, screenshots, timelines, every catering deposit, every rental reservation, every text exchange where I confirmed orders, payments, delivery times, every message from my mother, my aunt, even Julia herself. I wasn't unwell. I was prepared. So I created a group chat. I added Helen Ray, Julia Matt, Susan Emily, and Uncle David. No caption, no preamble. Then I sent the files, a PDF titled Anniversary Party, Claire's Payments and Correspondence. I watched the scene notifications light up one by one. Still I said nothing, just attached the evidence, sat back and waited. I muted the thread and went to brush my teeth. By the time I returned, the group chat had ignited. Susan had sent a "let's not escalate things" message. Julia responded with a string of frantic texts, denials, then justifications, then silence. My mum hadn't said anything. My dad sent a thumbs up emoji. Emily replied privately, "Holy hell, I'm so sorry." But none of them addressed what really mattered. Not one apology, not one acknowledgement of what had been done to me, only panic that their lie had been exposed. But this wasn't for them. This was for me, not revenge clarity. I needed them to see what I carried. I needed them to see that I wasn't the version of me they painted when I refused to be used. They called me unstable because I said no. They called me emotional because I drew a boundary. They lied because the truth was too uncomfortable. But I'd stopped caring about their comfort. This wasn't a declaration of war. It was a withdrawal of participation. I wouldn't clean up after their mess anymore. I wouldn't disappear to protect their stories. They wanted to act like I never existed. Fine. But they'd have to do it with the truth staring them in the face. They didn't say, "I'm sorry," not once. What they did say came in a flurry of accusations, guilt trips, and passive-aggressive barbs. Susan was first. "Did you really have to humiliate everyone like that?" she texted. This was supposed to be a celebration, not a courtroom. A celebration where I wasn't welcome, where lies were passed around like party favours. Julia followed next, firing off a storm of messages that swung wildly from denial to deflection. "I didn't say it like that. You're taking things out of context. You're being really dramatic." Her final message read, "If you wanted to make a point, congrats." "You did." "Helen." My mother went silent. So did Ray. Not a word from either of them. Just the kind of silence that crackled with bitterness, not regret. Not one person in that family asked if I was okay. Not one person admitted fault. Instead, they were angry they'd been caught. Angry that the story they'd carefully constructed had unravelled in public. That their favourite scapegoat had suddenly spoken up. But this time, I didn't rush in to fix anything. I didn't smooth things over, didn't soften the edges. I let the silence grow. Let it fill the space they'd always expected me to patch. And then I got to work. First, I logged into the tax software I'd used for years, free returns for my parents, my siblings, even Susan. I deleted every profile, every saved document, every automated reminder. Gone. Next was the HVAC maintenance plan. I'd set it up after their furnace died 2 winters ago, paid in full, renewed annually. I cancelled it. Sent an email to the service company and removed my name from all future communications, then the financial support. Small monthly deposits I'd been sending to my parents' joint account to cover incidental expenses, grocery overages, rising utility bills, that kind of thing. I stopped them all. Every single one. I removed my name as emergency contact from their health insurance. I deleted the shared calendar invites I'd created to remind them of bill payments, prescription pickups, and appointments. I disconnected myself from their world, not with a scream, but with a keystroke. It felt surgical, precise, not revenge, not even retaliation, just removal. For too long I'd been tethered to their needs, quietly, invisibly, constantly. And now I was cutting every thread. They wanted me gone from the party, fine. I was gone from everything. I imagined them discovering it slowly. When the HVAC tech didn't show, when the tax deadline came and went, when their bank app pinged low balance, when the internet bill doubled because the auto-pay discount disappeared. No drama, no big reveal, just absence. The same absence they gave me. And for the first time in years I felt clean, like I'd rinsed off something sticky I didn't even realise was on me. A residue of obligation, of inherited guilt. They built a life where my presence was conditional, where I was only valuable if I was useful. So now I was neither. Not present, not useful, not theirs. A few days after I cut the last tie, Julia messaged me. Her tone was unusually soft. No sarcasm, no edge. Just a simple, "Hey, I've been thinking about everything. I'm sorry for how things went. Maybe we could talk." I read it twice. Then I read it again. For a second my chest fluttered with hope. Maybe she was being sincere. Maybe she finally saw it. The imbalance, the cruelty, the quiet way they'd all taken and taken without asking what it cost me. But instinct told me to wait, not to reply, not just yet. So I waited. And later that night I got my answer. An email forwarded accidentally to a shared inbox we once used to coordinate Mom's prescriptions. Julia had forgotten I still had access. It was to Helen. Subject line, monthly support. "Hey Mum," she wrote. "Now that Claire's not covering utilities anymore, things are tight again. Any chance you and Dad could help out for a bit, just until I figure out something else? I know she made things complicated, but this isn't fair to us. Complicated, fair to them. So the apology was just a prelude. Not a change of heart, just a strategy. Reopen the door so the support could resume one way or another. She didn't miss me. She missed the financial buffer, the safety net. It stung. Not like a knife, more like a slow burn. But I didn't reply. Not to the text, not to the email, not to anything. I let it sit. And then I let it go. I put my phone face down on the counter and walked outside. The air was sharp, the kind that made your lungs work harder. I liked that. It made me feel alive. That night I pulled a book from my shelf, something I'd bought 6 months ago and never opened. Woodworking for Beginners. I'd always wanted to build something with my hands, something real, something no one could take from me. The next morning I went to the hardware store. Bought sandpaper nails, a simple saw. The guy at the register asked what I was building. I told him, peace. He laughed. I smiled, but I wasn't joking. In the weeks that followed, I joined a gym. I started swimming again, slow laps, the rhythm of breath and water pulling me out of my head and into my body. I took long walks without my phone, made dinner for myself with no one else in mind. I didn't check the group chat. I didn't scroll Julia's stories. I didn't wonder if they were missing me. I didn't care. Because for the first time, I wasn't orbiting them. I wasn't the fixer. I wasn't the helper. I wasn't the reliable one. I was just Claire. And I liked her. She was quiet, thoughtful, kind, not always available, but always real. Some nights I sat on the balcony with tea watching the sky turn indigo and thought, this is mine, this peace, this stillness, this breath. No one gave it to me. I claimed it and I wasn't giving it back. The subject line read, "We need to talk." It was an email from my father. Ray wasn't a man of technology. If he sent an email, it meant one of two things. Either the world was ending or something was about to cost money. The message was short, barely 3 sentences. Hi Claire, we're updating some estate documents and think it would be good to have a conversation before finalising. Let us know when you're free. Dad. There it was. No mention of the party, no acknowledgement of the fallout, just the vague scent of inheritance dangled like bait. I didn't reply. I stared at it for a while, noting the cold formality of it. Estate documents. Finalise. Like I was a stakeholder, not a daughter. Like this was a transaction, not a repair. They didn't miss me. They missed my usefulness. And now that the free labour was gone, they were trying a new angle legacy. But legacy didn't interest me. Peace did, so I deleted the email. That same night, Emily texted. Her message came in fragments like she didn't know where to begin. Hey, this might be weird, but I thought you should know. She'd just come from dinner at Susan's where Julia had been holding court. Julia was telling anyone who would listen that I hadn't really paid for the party, that I'd offered but never followed through, that I was struggling emotionally and had gone a little unwell during the planning. She said, "You ghosted last minute," Emily wrote, "and your reaction was kind of disproportionate." Disproportionate. That word echoed like a slap. Julia wasn't just bending the truth, she was rewriting it, recasting herself as the reasonable one, me as the erratic, unstable sister who crumbled under pressure and lashed out when things didn't go her way. It wasn't enough to erase my contributions, she had to stain my character too. And the worst part, she was doing it in rooms I wasn't in. That had always been her power. The behind-the-back charm, the calculated whispers. I'd seen her do it to others. I just never thought she'd turn it on me. But she had. And I wasn't going to let it slide. So I did something I never used to do, I answered. I sent Emily a zip file. It had everything. Receipts, confirmation emails, screenshots of text threads with vendors, payment acknowledgements, photos of my detailed planning timeline, a transcript of Susan's original message cutting me from the guest list, and Helen's follow-up. It's nothing personal. I included a note in case there's any confusion about what actually happened. Emily's reply was immediate. Holy shit. Claire, I had no idea. They made it sound like you snapped. I wrote. I just stopped. She didn't respond right away. Then finally, I'm sorry. They were so convincing. It's scary. Scary. That's what it was, wasn't it? How easily people can believe the worst version of you when it's told with just enough softness, just enough fake concern. We're just worried. She's been under a lot of pressure. You know how she gets. I used to think staying silent protected my dignity. Now I realised it only made me easier to misrepresent. So I wasn't silent anymore. I wasn't loud either, just precise. If they wanted to lie, they'd have to lie around the truth. Step over it. Pretend it wasn't sitting right there plain as day. Because I wasn't disappearing this time. I was documenting. And I was done being polite about being erased. The next morning I logged into my budgeting software and started closing every open tab that tethered me to them. First, the recurring bank transfers. I'd been sending $200 a month to my parents' account for years just in case money, groceries, emergencies, a cushion, cancelled. Next, the automatic payments tied to their utility accounts. I'd set up the electricity and water bills to route through my card after Helen had once missed a payment and panicked. I removed my info, deleted the profiles, then the prescription support. Helen had a few meds that insurance only partially covered. I'd signed up for a copay assistance program on her behalf. I ended it, not with malice, just finality. Every time I clicked cancel, I felt a little more like myself. I didn't send them a note. I didn't give them warning. They hadn't warned me when they rewrote my story, when they cut me out, when they built a narrative where I was unstable and unreliable, so I owed them nothing. Let them feel the consequences, not as punishment, but as absence. It didn't take long. 2 days later, I got a text from Ray, just a photo, a puddle under the kitchen sink, and a caption, "Any idea what's going on here?" I didn't reply. The next day, internet keeps dropping. You remember how to reset the router, then garage door won't open all the way. The texts kept coming. Not frantic, just expectant, like I was still the on-call tech support and facilities manager, like I was still Claire the fixer. But I wasn't. So I did what they never did for me. I ignored it. I went to the gym, I took a walk, I read the last few chapters of a novel I'd been neglecting. That night, another message came in, this time from Helen. "Hi, honey, we've been having some issues at the house. Nothing major, but would love your help when you get a minute. No, how are you? No acknowledgement. Just a friendly tap on the button labelled Claire." I didn't answer. Later that evening, Julia sent a group text with Matt. "Hey, does anyone know a good plumber? Mum says Claire's not responding." Matt added a thumbs up emoji and a gif of someone shrugging. I watched it all without flinching, because this wasn't guilt. This wasn't manipulation. This was dependency unraveling. They'd built a system around me, quietly, invisibly, a machine that ran because I kept it oiled. I wasn't just the daughter, I was the infrastructure. And now, without warning, the system was failing. That week I got 5 more texts, 2 missed calls, and a voicemail that ended with, "Not sure why you're so distant lately, but it'd be great if you could at least help us get the garage sorted." They still didn't get it. They thought the silence was a phase, a mood, something I'd snap out of. But this wasn't a tantrum, this was an awakening. For the first time, they were seeing the invisible labour that had kept their world functioning, not because I screamed about it, but because I stopped doing it, and I wasn't starting again. The letter arrived in a cream envelope, my name written in my father's signature blocky handwriting, half print, half cursive. There was no return address, but I knew who it was from before I even opened it. Inside 2 pages of lined notebook paper. The handwriting looked tentative, like he'd written it slowly, maybe even rehearsed. "Claire," it began. "I've been thinking about everything that happened. I regret how it all unfolded. I wish things had gone differently. Your mother and I never intended to hurt you. No mention of the party, no mention of the lies, no ownership, just regret. Regret was safe. Regret didn't require responsibility. It allowed him to acknowledge discomfort without addressing the cause." He ended with, "We hope in time you'll move past all this. We're still your family. Still your family." As if that title should override everything. As if being family meant I owed them reconciliation no matter what had occurred. I folded the letter neatly, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it into the drawer beside my bed. I didn't burn it. I didn't rip it up. I just filed it away, because I knew what it was. Not an apology, a PR move. 2 days later, Drew called. He used to live next door to my parents, a childhood friend, now a freelance photographer, and one of the few people who hadn't chosen sides. "You okay?" he asked. I told him I was fine, that I'd finally found peace, that I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There was a pause. "So just so you know, your dad's been talking to the neighbours." My stomach tightened. "He's saying you blew up over the party, that you cancelled everything because of some personal drama. He told Mr. Langston that you abandoned the family over a tent rental." I said nothing. "He said you were letting money change you, that it was sad to see." I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was bitter. Of course, the letter wasn't a bridge. It was a decoy. While he wrote lines about regret, he was rewriting the story for anyone who'd listen, trying to make me look small, petty, emotionally unstable, trying to save face. And it worked, because people love a simple narrative. They love to nod along to, "She just snapped," or "She's going through something." They don't want the complicated truth. That sometimes families break not with screaming but with silence, not with betrayal but with erosion. Ray wanted to be the sympathetic father, the man trying to mend a rift he didn't cause. So he handed out a story where I was the villain of my own making. I felt the fury rise not loud but deep, not explosive but cold. I wasn't surprised, just disappointed. Even now he couldn't face what he'd done. He couldn't sit with the idea that maybe, just maybe, he was the reason his daughter walked away, not because of a tent, but because of decades of being the fixer, the invisible backbone, the one who showed up without being seen. Now that I had walked away, he couldn't admit it, so he rewrote the ending. But I wasn't playing along. This wasn't a misunderstanding to clear up. This wasn't a fight to resolve. This was the fracture point, the moment where pretending ended. 3 days after Drew's call, I received a group text from Helen. Family dinner at our place this Saturday. Just something simple. Hope you can join us. No mention of the party, no mention of the fallout, no mention of the letter. Just a yellow heart emoji and an invitation like everything was fine. Like the last 3 months hadn't happened. Ray followed up separately. Your mum would love to see you. We're moving forward. No need to dwell on the past, no need to dwell. That phrase, so clean, so dismissive, was how they dealt with everything. They didn't resolve, they skipped, they painted over. I didn't respond right away. I let the texts sit in my inbox, unopened for hours, like fruit rotting in the sun. That night, Julia called. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded cheerful, falsely light. Just wanted to say hi, everyone's really hoping to see you. No pressure, but it would mean a lot to Mom. That was her way of saying, we've decided the conflict is over. You should show up now. But I wasn't following their script anymore, so I waited until morning, then called Ray. He picked up after the first ring. Claire, he said, his voice hopeful. I'm not coming, I said. He paused. Why not? Because I don't forgive you, I said evenly. Any of you. There was silence on the line, and I don't want to be around people who only remember I exist when they need something. I continued. He exhaled. We're trying, Claire. We're making an effort. No, I said, calm but firm. You're pretending nothing happened. That's not the same. I thought you'd moved on. I've moved on, I said. I'm just not going back. I could feel him searching for the right words, but they never came. So I ended it for him. At least for the near future, I said, then hung up. No shouting, no tears. Just the clean final weight of a door closing. For years I'd been the one to chase, to smooth things over, to show up despite the bruises. But not this time. This time I chose myself. Later that week, I got one last message from Julia. It said, we're ready to forgive how you handled everything. You should come. I stared at it stunned. They weren't just skipping the apology. They were positioning themselves as the ones offering forgiveness. Forgiving me. For what? For standing up. For setting boundaries. For refusing to be used. That message clarified everything I needed to know. They hadn't changed. They didn't see it, so I deleted the text. Then I went out for coffee, sat on a park bench, watched 2 dogs wrestle over a stick and laughed out loud. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not from them exactly, but from the version of myself that needed their approval. I wasn't angry, I wasn't vengeful, I was just done, and that more than anything scared them. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when Emily texted Coffee. I hadn't seen her since the group chat fallout. She was one of the few who had stayed neutral, not silent, just careful. She didn't push, didn't pry, didn't take sides. She simply existed on the edge, like a bridge waiting to be crossed. We met at a small cafe downtown. No frills, just wood tables, strong coffee, and the low hum of strangers keeping their conversations to themselves. Emily looked hesitant when she sat down. She stirred her drink 3 times before speaking. I thought you should know, she said. Your mum, she's been going to therapy. I blinked. What? For real, she said. Apparently after you walked away, things started to unravel more than I realised. Julia stopped coming around as much. Ray got quieter. Some of the extended family started calling them out. Nothing dramatic, just distance. I didn't say anything, just listened. But the real shift came. Emily continued when your mum tried to plan Thanksgiving and no one offered to help. Your dad told her, we're not doing that again. That's when she broke down, like really broke. I absorbed the words slowly, like tea steeping too long. She admitted a lot, Emily said. The lies, the way they used you, the way they treated your support as default. That alone should have felt like vindication. But it didn't. It felt like late. She's seeing someone weekly now, Emily added, working on her stuff, her words. I nodded slowly. That's good, I said eventually, really good. Then Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is from your dad. I stared at it. He didn't want to send a text, she said it felt too small. I unfolded it, one line scrawled in heavy strokes. I'm trying to learn how to be a dad. No signature, no flourish, just that. And somehow it hit harder than every apology he never gave. Because it wasn't polished, it wasn't defensive, it wasn't even complete. It was the first thing he'd written that felt real. I folded the paper and slid it into my coat pocket. We didn't talk much after that, just sat, sipping our drinks, watching the world move past the window. But I carried that note with me the rest of the day. At home, I set it on my nightstand beside the old envelope from his first letter. 2 versions of the same man, one trying to preserve pride, the other trying to rebuild from scratch. That night, I stood by my window and looked out into the dark. The streetlights glowed orange. Somewhere down the block, a neighbour was grilling. The smell of charcoal mixed with cold air. I inhaled deeply. It didn't feel like closure, but it felt like space. Space for something different, not reconciliation, not reunion, just something slower, more honest. A kind of goodbye that wasn't final, but wasn't a return either. 2 days after meeting Emily, I sat down at my kitchen table with a pen and a blank card, not an email, not a text, not even a typed letter, just a quiet, handwritten note, something tangible, something that couldn't be edited or misread in digital threads. I kept it short. You don't need to apologize again, I wrote. What you do from here matters more. I'm not ready to come back, but I'm open to something new, something slower, something real. If that's what you want too, then we'll see. I didn't sign it with love, I signed it with my name. Claire. I sealed the envelope, wrote Ray and Helen on the front, and dropped it in the mailbox on my walk that evening. The air was crisp. Leaves had started to fall, coating the sidewalks in shades of red and gold. Each step felt deliberate, like I was walking away from something without slamming the door. I didn't expect a response. I didn't check the mail every day like I used to after sending something hard. I didn't keep my phone in reach, waiting for a buzz. I simply let it be. And life continued. I worked, I read, I kept building small things with my hands, bookshelves, a bench for my porch, even a wooden planter for the herbs I'd been meaning to grow. I was carving out a life where peace wasn't a reward for good behaviour, but a right I'd claimed. The silence from my family wasn't painful anymore. It was space. It gave me room to think, to breathe, to remember who I was before I became a series of favours and forgotten birthdays. Eventually I drove past their house. I didn't stop. I didn't go in. I didn't even slow down. But the porch light was on. The blinds were open. The driveway was empty. It looked like normal life. But I knew better now. Normal had always been the disguise they wore over dysfunction. The "we're fine" they used to cover the cracks they never wanted to name. Still something had shifted. Maybe it was the therapy. Maybe it was the letter. Maybe it was just the weight of my absence finally settling in. I didn't know, and I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about them anymore. This was about me. About not letting old versions of myself creep back in. The people pleaser, the peacemaker, the fixer who bled for everyone else and called it love. I was done bleeding. Done sacrificing clarity for closeness. Done pretending forgiveness was owed just because someone finally looked uncomfortable. What I wanted now was honest change. Not grand gestures, not empty words, real effort, real accountability, and until I saw that I would stay right where I was, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. This wasn't goodbye, but it wasn't a return either. It was a new kind of waiting, patient, measured, hopeful but not naive, and maybe one day they'd show up not with promises but with proof. Until then I would keep living the life I'd built without them, not out of rebellion, but out of choice.